Hello friends, welcome to Late Night Creations. I'm so glad you clicked on this video today because I have some special fall DIYs for you today. This is a compilation video. These are videos from previous DIY content that I have already created. There are original voiceovers, so it may have some outdated information, giveaways, playlists, challenges, all that stuff is expired and does not apply, but watch and enjoy. Let's get started crafting. I have a client who has become a very good friend, and she bought some property from her stepfather, and this tin came off of a very old store that was on the property that she bought. And she donated some of it to me to craft with. What a great friend. I'm going to show you a couple pictures of the store back in the 1800s, early 1900s. It was a service station. This was the early 1900s. This is around 2007. And this is a piece of that tin that I cut into this little piece to use. I'm going to take my little finger sander and I'm going to sand the edges because that tin has some little shards on the edge that are really sharp. And so I'm going to just take my little finger sander, and there's probably an appropriate way to sand tin, but I don't really know what that is. And this worked, so that's what I did. Now, the tin will be fairly sharp, so you have to be really careful. See these little shards of metal that came off of it. So I'm being very careful to not cut myself. Now, my friend Myra over at Farm Fresh Designs 59 gave me this wooden leaf cutout when I went to visit her in North Carolina a few weeks ago. And this bark we stripped from one of her trees in her forest. Well, some of it was on the ground and some of it we took off the tree, but the tree had plenty, so we didn't hurt the tree at all. And I managed to make it home with it in my suitcase. I didn't get arrested or anything like that. Now I'm taking some weathered wood and a wet sponge, and I'm just going to cover this entire leaf with this brown paint. It's kind of a little bit watered down because that sponge is wet. I'm going to do the sides and the back as well. And then I'm going to let it dry completely. It's a nice warm summer day in Texas, so I just set it out on the porch of the craft cottage, and it dried fairly quick. And this is the beautiful color that it turned out. I'm going to take my Type Bond Quick and Thick, and I thought I was going to be able just to use it to adhere these beautiful pieces of bark to this leaf. But I quickly found out that I needed to add just a little bit of hot glue for that quick hold so that my pieces would stay where I wanted them while I was moving pieces around. Now, I thought I was going to be smart and just put a piece on there and glue it down and pick up my next piece. Then I decided, maybe I should lay it all out and have a plan. Maybe we should have a plan. That would be a great idea. So I started picking up the pieces and breaking them and making them look, you know, how I wanted them. So I'm not going to bore you with all the time that it took me to do this. Well, it probably took me honestly about 20 minutes to do this entire process. You see there now I got smart and started putting some hot glue down. Then I started just laying them down and trying to figure out where I wanted the pieces and got all the pieces laid out how I wanted them. And then I started gluing them down. That was a much smarter way to do it. Some of the pieces, I made them thinner and, broke them apart. Some of them look like they just should be where they needed to go. And then later you'll see that I go back in and fill those little empty spots in with some of those little crusty pieces that fell off. And then I just glued some pieces to some of the edges and let it hang off. Like kind of poked it up underneath there. And then I went along and just like you would with a finger sander, I'm just going to poke that in there with my little tool. And just like you would with a finger sander, I'm going to use my finger and go down all around the edges. But I don't need a sander because these just break off real easy. But just like you would a finger, your sandpaper around the edges when we're doing paper, I'm just going to rub off all those little pieces of bark so that we can have a nice smooth edge. Now there are some little empty places, so if you have a little bit of OCD, like sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I'm a little ADD with my OCD. I'm going to just put a little bit of Tite Bond in there and then pick up a few of those little crumbs and drop them in there to fill it in. And it worked out just perfect. I love how this leaf turned out. Now I'm going to use, surprise, surprise, some canvas drop cloth. I frayed the edges of this drop cloth because I like that look, and I wanted to have some contrast between the leaf and this piece of rusty crusty tin. Just got a piece of this ribbon out of my stash. It originally came from Sam's Club, and then this other little ribbon came from Joann's a couple of years ago. I'm going to take some drop cloth, canvas drop cloth, cut a few little strips, you know, just whatever color pieces of things I had that I thought would look good with this, or what I liked. You know, all of these DIYs are just for inspiration. Now I had these little wooden acorns that came from Dollar Tree, and they came in a little pack. I don't know, 6 or 8 of them in a pack. And I'm just going to take some dark wax by DIY and rub it all over it, because that just gave it just the look I wanted. And I did trim down that bow a little bit. It was a little bit too big. And I glued it down to the center, and then I'm just going to glue these 2 little acorns right in the center. Kind of had a little trouble with the placement, but I ended up just playing with it until I figured out how I wanted them on there. And sometimes you just have to keep messing with it. Sometimes I have to walk away and come back. Okay, now we're going to glue down the canvas drop cloth. I'm going to make sure that I have it straight and even, and then flip this tin over, and I'm going to use the Tite Bond and some hot glue. I think the hot glue would have held the canvas drop cloth to this tin just fine, but I want to be sure. I really think that I should have put some on the front, but I didn't. I only did it on the back. I will show you why in just a minute, because when I put that heavy leaf on there, I had to make some adjustments. Now, I used this thicker jute cord that I got at Walmart. I put some masking tape on the end so that I could get it through the holes. One of those holes was already there. It was from where they had it screwed to the roof. And then I just drilled another one with my drill. And I'm just going to tie a knot in it so that it doesn't pull out. And then I'm just going to cut that masking tape off. And I like to put a little drop of super glue right down in that knot so it doesn't go anywhere. I'm going to take just that dark wax that was left on my brush, and I'm going to brush it over this drop cloth and over those little saw marks that I have on there. My saw kind of skid out of the cut line on me a couple times, and so I'm just going to make it where it's not so shiny. Now, I put the Tite Bond all around this and the hot glue in the middle. Now, I've tried to make sure that I put that hot glue and press it down so it goes all the way through the canvas drop cloth onto the tin, so that the leaf is actually attached to the tin, if that makes sense. Otherwise, it's going to flop because the leaf is heavy. So I think this turned out just lovely. So let me know what you think about it in the comments below. What did you think about all the elements in that one DIY? Wasn't that fun? Hello, my name is Kendra and you're watching Late Night Creations. I have more great DIYs to come in this video, so stay tuned. Let's get back to crafting. I used one of these signs in a previous video, and several people thought I was making a pumpkin with it, so I thought, well, I better just make a pumpkin. So I took it out and sanded the front of it off, and now I'm going to paint it with Summer Crush by DIY, and I'm going to give it one good solid coat all across the front and the sides. I get all my DIY paints, my IOD products from Sammy at www.unicorndustdesigns.com. Her link will be in the description box below. I used a little bit of weathered wood to make the dark stripes. I mixed it just in with my brush that already had the paint on it, and then a little bit of vintage linen mixed in to make the lighter ones. Now, I'm using the Varathane finishing paste wax and buffing it out because it's going to give this a durable finish that I can use it on my front porch. I have this little spindle. It's the bottom of a chair leg, and I'm just going to use my sander and shape it up. Now that was in real time, and I don't want to bore you with all the sanding that I did on this little spindle to get it where I wanted it to be, but I'm showing you that I'm going to make the back of it flat so it will lay flat on my pumpkin and look like a stem or a peduncle, whatever you want to call it. And so I made it flat. I'm going to show you here shortly how the back of it looks flat and how easy that was. Okay, here is our spindle all finished up. I'm going to take some aviary paint. It's a beautiful green by DIY, and I'm going to paint this little spindle with one coat. I'm not going all the way down to the bottom because you are not going to see it. I'm going to dry it up with my heat gun, and then I'm going to take some good old Elmer's school glue. I'm going to squirt a little bit out in this old lid, and I'm going to give it this spindle a coat of it. A little thicker in some places, not so thick in some places, because we're going to do a crackle effect. The places that you want the crackle thicker, put, you know, the glue thicker. Now, while the glue is still wet, we're going to use layered chocolate. Is this layered chocolate or weathered wood? I think this is weathered wood. And I'm going to put a thick layer of the paint without overlapping. You can just put one coat. Cannot go back and forth, and the crackle will begin immediately. I'm going to use my heat gun because I want the crackle to be pretty thick, because if you've ever seen a pumpkin stem, they are kind of green and brown and all the colors. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, I sanded it down a little bit so that my glue would stick well. And I'm going to put some Titebond Quick and Thick and some hot glue. And this looks so cute, y'all. I love this pumpkin. I actually have it sitting on the credenza underneath my TV. Gonna take some Spanish moss and just put a big clump of it right on the bottom of this peduncle. I'm going to put some glue a little bit on each side. Now, I have this old piece of crusty wire that I actually found in my husband's shop, and he doesn't really listen to my videos, so he's not going to know that I stole it from him. I wrapped it around that little wooden handle to make it like a little spiral, and I'm going to glue one of these little burlap leaves from Dollar Tree on here, and look how cute this is looking so far. So cute. Now, I have some, there's that little curly Q. I have some raffia that I got at Hobby Lobby on clearance after the fall season. And it's kind of in this brown rust color. And I'm just going to tie a knot. I'm going to get some all about the same length. I'm going to tie a knot in the middle. I tie it pretty good, then I loosen it up just to make, it's not even, I won't even call this a bow. I don't even know what you want to call this. Some kind of little messy adornment. How about that? I'm going to glue that right up on the top, right up in the middle, in lieu of a bow, just like you see me doing here. Oh, I'm going to trim it first so that it's even on both sides. And how I do that is I just fold it in the middle so both sides are even. Okay. Just like this. And this is what it looks like.
And last but not least, we're still using spindles out of that big old stash. So we're going to use one of these spindles. I cut it down to size. I'm going to use some faded burlap by DIY, and I'm going to paint this entire piece with one good coat. I'm showing you here how to paint a spindle, just in case you didn't know. So painting the entire piece. There we go. Then I had these little wood rounds that I got off Temu for a very good price. And I'm just going to paint the inside of them with the faded burlap because the original color was a little golden. So I did it, then I wiped most of it off with a wet wipe just to give it the right tone. Now I got these little, I don't really know what these are, beaded charms from Hobby Lobby. They were $1.49 and I got them when they were 40% off. So that was a steal of a deal. Now I'm going to paint this orange color by DIY. I believe it's called Summer Crush. Then I'm going to add a little bit of, I think, maybe layered chocolate or weathered wood in there to make the stem just a little bit darker. And then I'm going to make some lines on the pumpkin with what's left in the brush. There we go, just like that. Just to make it look a little more like a pumpkin, you know. Give it a little dimension. So I do that on both sides. Now the leaf, I'm starting out with some faded burlap. And then I'm going to dip my brush with the faded burlap still in it into those brown colors that are in my little mixing lid. These lids come off of, I don't even know what I have that was in, but the faded burlap on the leaf is still a little bit wet. It's not completely dry, so these colors are blending in there. I'm just going to blend it, and then I just add a little darker on top so it looks like a little fall leaf. Now I'm going to take, I believe this is cake batter by DIY for our acorn bottom, and for the little hat we're going to use layered chocolate. And I'm doing these, I'm painting this on both sides of each one of these little charms. And then I'm going to dip my paintbrush, get most of the paint off, and then dip it into that lighter brown color and make the little lines on the top to make it look like the little hat of the acorn. And when you can see it a little bit better when it dries, and it's not really what I'm trying to say. It's very subtle. See there, as it's drying, it's very subtle, which is fine. Okay, I did put a little shading on the bottom of the acorn as well with just the same technique. I'm going to use some clear wax by DIY, and I'm going to give it a really hefty, good, thick coat of DIY wax all over the spindle. I also used the wax on those charms. Okay, then I buffed it out. Then I'm going to use dark wax right on top. So the dark wax is not going to be as dark because we have the clear wax on there. It's going to wipe back a whole lot easier. But this is one of my favorite colors to do, is that faded burlap with the dark wax. I absolutely love the outcome. I just think it's so beautiful. So I did that. Now I want to put these wood rounds behind the straight flat parts of the spindle so that it is elevated away from the wall so that the beads, it's like a spacer. So there's enough room for the beads to hang, because we're just going to make a little hangy. It's kind of like a towel bar, but it's for decoration. Now, I started with some hot glue and some Tite Bond, and then I realized that that wasn't enough space. The beads were too thick. So I took it apart and I got a second wood round, and then I just glued the two of them together, and it was kind of fun because the second one was just a hair bigger than the first one, and so that worked out perfect. I didn't even paint the second one, and then I glued those two together like you see me doing there. And then I went ahead and sanded down. I wiped it. I didn't sand it. I wiped off that paint with a damp cloth thinking that maybe that was the reason that the glue actually peeled off really easy. That hot glue peeled off really easy. So I was hoping that doing that would help the hot glue stick to this better. So here we go. Trying it again, and it worked perfectly this time. I could have done my little trick with the holes and the dowel sticks, and that would make it be even more durable, and that's probably what I should have done, but this worked just fine. I did drill some holes in the back of each of those wood rounds to use to hang it on the wall. Okay, our first acorn DIY is going to be with these little wooden acorns you can get at Dollar Tree multi in a package, or I believe you can get them at Hobby Lobby as well. We're going to use some glue. You could use the kind you can get at Dollar Tree, or I'm going to use the Type Bond Quick and Thick because it's my favorite. And I'm going to glue 4 of these together to make a thicker piece. I do this frequently with these thinner pieces, and it's a very budget-friendly way to make a thicker decor piece. So I'm just going to spread the glue evenly and then just put them together, and they fit together very nicely. I'm going to put glue between each layer, and then I'm going to do that with all of them, and then I'm going to use my little clamps that I get at Dollar Tree. I love these little clamps, and I'm going to glue them all together and let them sit until it dries, which is usually about 10-15 minutes. So in the meantime, we will move on to another DIY or clean our mess up or do something. Now I'm going to take some Sandy Blonde by DIY and paint the top. Then I decided I'm going to paint the bottom. I have to go back and paint the top because, yeah, I should have just painted the bottom in the first place, because you'll see I have to go back and do it over. So I mixed some layered chocolate, some Sandy Blonde, a little crinoline. I just, mixed some paints till I got the color I wanted. I started painting it this color, and then I decided I needed a little more layered chocolate in there to get it a little bit darker. And then I did use a paper towel, and I wanted it to look a little bit more stained rather than a real solid color. Then I go back over it, that top part with the Sandy Blonde, and get this look. Okay, and now I'm going to let it dry completely. I use my heat gun to aid it along, and then I'm going to use the IOD Vintage Texture Stamp. And I'm going to use this one on the upper left-hand corner. And the first time that you use your stamps, you want to prime them by using a like 220 grit sandpaper. And I've already done that, so I don't need to do that today. And I'm going to tape off the bottom because I only want this texture on the top, so it looks like the little hat on the acorn. So I'm using stone gray ink with this texture so that it's not real stark, where it's just going to be subtle. And I'm going to press it down evenly, holding it carefully so it doesn't move and smear, and it turns out perfect. I love the way this looks. And I did take the ink pad and ink around the edges a little bit, and then I took a eyeshadow makeup sponge and dabbed it on the ink pad and just added some shadows and, gave it a little bit of dimension. You can skip that step if you want to, if you're making something similar, but I just think this adds little extra shadows and gives it a little extra dimension, and it just makes it look a little more high-end. Now we're going to take, I forgot to get all of this on camera, but I took one of the little tumbling tower blocks from Dollar Tree, glued it to the back of the acorn, and then glued it to one of these little birch chunks of wood that I got at Dollar Tree, and added a little bit of Spanish moss. And this is an adorable little acorn sitter for our tier tray. Next, we are going to use the new IOD release mold. This is a mold. That's what it is, Kendra. It's a mold. And I'm going to use some cornstarch in there. And we are going to make molds to put on a little clay pot. I'm using the DOS air dry clay. You can get that on Amazon. You can buy it at Michael's or Hobby Lobby. And I'm just going to press it down in there, and it has a little micro edge. It's like a little lip on there, and you just press it down in and push it, and you can clean that edge off. You can use something like this little spatula or an old gift card or an old credit card to make it smooth on the back. And then when you get through, you just kind of dump them out. I did not get that on camera either. Now I'm going to take vintage linen and an old crusty chippy brush, and ask me how you get those old and chippy brushes is you just leave them in the water for days after you've used them before you wash them and clean them. Yeah, that's how they get old and chippy and ruined. Okay, so I'm not really doing a dry brush. I'm just doing a light coat. I'm leaving the, a little bit of paint on there, but I'm using a very light hand and going over it. So this is the look that I want. You can paint it solid if you want. You can do, whatever suits your fancy. This is just what I wanted to do today. Now, those little molds that I just pressed in, I'm going to glue them with the tight bond, quick and thick, onto the planter. Now, these with the clay, you're able to form to a round surface, a curved surface, whereas if you're using resin, it's a little more difficult to do. You can heat them up and get a little bit of movement with them, but not like you can with the air dry clay. Now, these are still soft and pliable, so we can curve them. Now, I'm going to make sure that I'm pressing down all around the edges so that it's nice and sealed around the edges, and making sure that I'm pulling that glue all the way out to the edges. And then I'm going to put all three of those little pieces all down on there and press tightly, and then remove all the excess glue with a little small paintbrush. And I'm using that cloth just to keep my pot from rolling around. Now I'm going to take Aviary by DIY, and I'm going to paint that little leaf with the Aviary, because I guess in the fall we still have a green leaf. I don't know why I painted it green, but I wanted it green. And then I'm just going to mix some colors that I like. I'm going to mix these colors up to paint these acorns the colors that I want. And very similar to the acorn I did in the previous DIY, with the bottom a little darker than the top, or the top a little darker than the bottom. I can't remember. Anyway, you're going to see how I do them. And I use the sandy blonde, layered chocolate, a little bit of summer crush, which is a nice pumpkin color. I added a tiny little bit of that in to get a little bit more of a golden color. And so that's just making the acorns the color, that I wanted them to be. And then I'm going to, I remember if I sealed this with some Big Top or clear DIY wax. But first I'm going to take some vintage linen and do a dry brush across so it brings out the details. I love to do this to bring out the details in those beautiful molds, because the IOD sisters do a fantastic job on those molds. I just put some fall foliage in this little pot, and I think it turned out adorable for our tier tray. This one is so simple. These are a couple of blocks that I cut off of those spindles that I've had in my stash, and a piece of scrapbook paper. This is a two-sided coordinating scrapbook paper that I got that's very neutral. I'm going to glue these two blocks together. You could use any kind of scrap wood for this, and it would be adorable. Okay, then I'm just going to cut the scrap wood. Oh, first I'm going to paint. I'm going to paint the outsides. I'm not even painting the front and the back because you're not going to see it. I'm going to take a little sandy blonde on the chippy brush and give it a little dry brush on the sides. I'm going to cut this scrapbook paper to size from the front and the back, and I'm going to use the front and the back of the paper. I hope that made sense. It made sense in my head. Okay, we're going to put the acorns on the front and the plaid on the back. Very simple. Just put the glue or the Mod Podge or whatever you want to put on, even coat, smooth it out, put the paper on there, press it down firmly all the way around. I don't feel the need to put Mod Podge on top. I will seal it with clear wax. Now, that was a lot of Mod Podge. I ended up having to wipe a bunch of it off of my brush. I don't know why I squirted out so much glue. Now, I'm going to take my little finger sander and I'm going to go all the way around the edges in a downward motion to get all that excess paper off and to give it a little distressing. I'm going to take a little bit of dark wax and rub it around those edges because that paper had a white center core. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. And then I'm going to use that dark wax by DIY on an old scrap piece of a t-shirt. I just take my husband's old white t-shirts and cut it up in pieces when we're ready to throw them away and use them out in the craft cottage. And I'm going to go all around the edges to give it a little bit of an outline on the edges, and then just all over the fronts too. Well, I think I went back with some clear wax too to seal it up. Now I'm going to use some chiffon lace. Surprise, surprise, friends. I'm going to use some chiffon lace and a little bit of twine and just put a little knot. I'm going to cut it down to size. I'm going to leave one piece of this twine a little bit longer than the other pieces. And then I had cut out one of those acorns and punched a hole in it. And I'm going to put that twine through and just leave it hanging like a little tag. I thought that was a cute little added extra to give it a little extra cuteness. And I'm going to put a little tad of hot glue just so it doesn't go anywhere. I hope that you are enjoying these Acorn DIYs. Please leave a comment and let me know which one of these is your favorite, and let me see if your favorite is the same as mine. Let's get back to crafting. We are going to use Summer Crush by DIY on this little framed shadow box piece that came from, I think, the Target dollar spot. Someone gave it to me. We're going to use some layered chocolate and some cake batter. I'm going to use these acorns. You could use the little wooden ones that come in a package, but I decided I was going to use these little, they're kind of styrofoam. They came in some like pine cone, scatter, bowl filler from Hobby Lobby last year on clearance. And they were a little difficult to paint. It took a couple coats, but I got the frame painted with the Summer Crush, and now I'm going to dry brush a little bit of the browns that I used on the acorns and just give it a little dry brush around the edges so that it's not just all one color. Now I cut a little piece of canvas drop cloth to fit just inside our little shadow box frame, and yep, it fits perfectly. And I'm going to take the Apothecary stamp labels by IOD. I get all my IOD products, DIY paints, Saltwash, any of those products that I use from Sammy at unicorndustdesigns.com. So head on over to her website if you're interested and check her out. Now I'm going to stamp the word fall, F-A-L-L, on this little piece of drop cloth. I actually went over it twice to get the depth of the color that I wanted. I'm going to use a little bit of the glue to glue this down inside. This glue will glue the fabric down perfectly. The thing I love about this glue the most is that it will glue quickly. It dries quickly. I'm going to use a little bit of Spanish moss in the bottom, just so it looks like some dead dry grass, which we have an abundance of in Texas right now. It's starting to look like fall just because everything is dying because it's so dry. I know my friends over on the East Coast are getting flooded with water because of the tropical storm, and I hope that they are all safe and not losing power, but I would love for them to blow a little bit of the rain over to Texas. But we're going to be grateful and thankful for whatever weather we have because we know that God is in control and we are not, and we're going to be thankful and blessed. Okay, this is probably my favorite in the video. I had these 4 little acorns. I'm going to cut out 4 pieces of this scrapbook paper, 2 from each color, as you see here. I'm going to put a layer of Mod Podge on each one of those acorns. Oh, but first, I'm going to use some layered chocolate. I'm going to sand. I don't even know what I'm doing here, guys. Just hang with me. I'm going to sand the ends of that smooth. All the pieces of this little piece of scrap wood, I'm going to sand it smooth. And I'm going to take some layered chocolate and a baby wipe and give this piece of wood a stained effect. I absolutely love this method of staining. It's a whole lot less messy than using wood stain, and it certainly doesn't smell, and it dries super quick. And there's no sticky, tacky, anything to deal with like there is when you're working with wood stains. Now I'm going to use some Mod Podge. I'm going to put an even coat of Mod Podge on each one. Mod Podge. Come on, spit it out. On each one of these acorns, and I'm going to let it dry completely. And once it's completely dry, then I'm going to get out my little mini press. You could use a household iron as long as you have no steam. You want a dry iron to do this with. And you just press it down on there for a few seconds and let it dry, let it cool, and then it will be adhered. I'm going to take my little mini sander. I love this little finger sander, micro sander. It works really good. And I'm going to go in a downward motion. You could use an emery board, a little piece of sandpaper, whatever works for you. And I'm going to take off the excess paper. And then, like I did with the acorn in the previous DIY, I'm going to use the ink pad and I'm going to go around the edges. And then I'm going to take the black ink pad and I'm going to use the typesetter stamps, and I'm going to stamp the letters in the lowercase because those are the ones that fit on the acorns. The letters fall, F-A-L-L. I am in love with this scrapbook paper. It is so neutral for fall, and although I do really like color for fall, I'm not into the traditional fall colors, the orange and rust. I'm a more cool color person, so I really am liking this paper with the more cool browns so that it gives off more of a neutral decor. So I'm going to arrange these the way that I think that they're going to look cute on here. And I had every intention of putting these where I could just stand this little piece of wood up because it was thick enough to do that. But as you can see, I have the tips of these acorns hanging down below the flat surface of the wood. But I fixed that little problem once I figure out that it is a problem. But I'm just gluing these with a little bit of hot glue and a little bit of the Tite Bond. Now the L needs a little help, so I just took a tiny little piece of a popsicle stick, glued it to the back so it would be level, and used that. You can't even see it. Okay, now I realize that, it's not going to sit upright. So I grab a couple little pieces of these wood rounds. I think I got these in a bag from... Actually, somebody gave these to me as leftover decor from either a baby shower or a wedding or something. And so I had them in my stash. But I think you can pick these up at Hobby Lobby. You may even be able to find something similar at Dollar Tree. I'm not sure. Okay, now it's dry, and I made a little bow out of some chiffon ribbon, and I'm going to put a little twine bow right in the center of that one, and this one is done. Let me know if this is your favorite too. Okay, last but definitely not least, we are going to do this little wood round. I have a bunch of these in my stash, and my friend Sammy over at Unicorn Dust Designs made a bunch of tags last week on a video. If you did not see that video, I'm going to link it in the description box below, and you go click on it, and you can watch her video where she made a bunch of these with stamps. I'm not real sure right now what blanks she used, but they were round, just round blanks, and she made some adorable tags. So this was totally inspired by her to make this little wood round to go on my tier tray. So I had these in my stash, so now I'm using this. Is the, I can't remember the exact name. I think it's Hello Pumpkin is the mold. I can't remember the name of this stamp, but it's the pumpkin and leaf stamp by IOD. So put the stamps where I want them. I'm going to use this little plastic sheet to help me with placement. I'm using this brown ink that I got on Amazon, and it worked really good. I was a little skeptical because I wasn't sure how it was going to work, so I inked it up really, really good. But it worked really, really good, y'all. So I was really pleased with it. It turned out exactly how I wanted it to. So I was making sure I was pressing that down good, see? But look how pretty it turned out. So then I'm going to use the masks, and when I took that out, I tore off that tiny little piece. So I just laid it on there. Now I'm going to put the leaf behind it, and I had thought I was going to use that green, and then I realized, no, the leaves are not green in fall. I finally realized that at the end of this video. So I'm going to put the brown leaf behind. So this, using that mask is going to make it look like the leaf is behind the acorns. So I'm going to press that down, and then I'm going to use just another little piece. Okay, so it lifted up with that, so I wiped it off, and then I put it back down over, and I'm going to use just another little piece of that leaf to fill in a little gap there. I'm going to take some clear wax by DIY. I use quite a bit once that ink is completely dry, and I don't want anything to smear, and I wax it. Now, I got a whole package of these little tassel, beaded tassels on Temu when they sent me a big order to review. You might remember that video. But I also was in Dollar Tree today and saw that you could purchase some beaded tassels there. For our first DIY, we are going to use these 2 pieces of scrap wood that were given to me from a guy who makes rocking chairs. These are just some cutout pieces that he had left over. We're going to use some linen white chalked paint and some little black dress by DIY. We're going to paint one chunk of this wood in black, and it has some beautiful texture on it from the saw that he used to cut it with, and I did not sand it down because I loved the texture that those cut lines gave these pieces of wood. So one of them we're going to give one solid coat of black, one solid coat of white on the other. So we're going with a black and white theme here in case you haven't figured it out. And then I'm going to set these aside to completely dry. Then I'm going to come back in with some clear wax by DIY and give each one of them a nice thick coat so that it seals nicely, because we don't want that paint going anywhere. We want to seal it up so that they'll be nice and sealed up. Then I'm going to take a little piece of an old t-shirt that I cut up, and we're going to buff that out. Now I'm going to use a dark t-shirt on the black one because I don't want any of that white from the white t-shirt to fuzz off on my black paint. So I'm going to use the darker piece of t-shirt on the darker paint. Now I have these little pieces of driftwood sticks that I got at Dollar Tree quite some time ago. But I'm telling you, just go out in the yard and grab you some sticks or whatever you can find. You could use some little dowel sticks, or in a previous DIY, I used the ends of the foam paintbrush sticks, those sticks on the end of the foam paintbrushes. That would absolutely work on this DIY as well. I was just using some things in my stash. So I'm going to paint one set black and one set white. Now, you could just totally glue them on. I want them to be a little bit sturdy, so I'm going to drill a hole in the bottom of the stem and a hole in the top of the quote-unquote pumpkin. If you could see me, I'm doing air quotes with my fingers. Our pumpkin. This is a method that I like to use if you've watched my channel at all, because this makes it really sturdy. And, you know, I'm a little bit extra, so we have to do things a little bit extra around here sometimes. So I'm going to just make sure that that goes down in there nicely and snugly. Now I'm going to use this buffalo check ribbon and this, what does my friend Myra call that? Eyelash lace. That's a little tongue twister there. Eyelash lace. So instead of Spanish moss, because that's not the look we're going for on this DIY, if you want Spanish moss on your black and white decor, then absolutely go for it. But I was going for a different kind of look. I don't really want it to be a frilly look. I still want to keep that farmhouse look. So I'm going to just wrap it around the bottom here so that it gives it that look of some Spanish moss or something growing there, but it's a little bit going with our colors, black and white. I don't really know what I'm talking about or what to say, but you see the look that it gives. Now, I did go back and cut these shorter a little bit later because I decided I didn't like them that long. But I did the exact same thing on the black one, and I'm using the fray check because this ribbon tends to fray really bad. So I did this same exact method on the black one, just the total opposite colors. And just used my little hot glue, glued this stuff down really good. I guess I'm showing you every little piece of hot glue I put on there, every little pick and every little poke. Okay, and here they are. So I really think these turned out adorable. So you have to let me know what you think. This MDF wood sign was donated to me, given to me. Several of them. I've done a DIY with one previously, but I decided that I'm going to paint the entire thing white with the linen white chalk paint. I'm going to use this Thankful Blessed sign that was given to me by my friend Nanette from Colorado Springs. Thank you, Nanette. And I'm going to use the IOD paint inlay from the latest release. It has some beautiful pieces in here. It's black and white. It's the Delft Traditions in black. There's also this same one in blue that's absolutely beautiful as well. It has some beautiful designs. This is right up my alley. So we are going to use this beautiful floral. It looks a little bit springish, but we're going to make it work for fall. I'm going to give this a really nice coat of white with this awesome paintbrush that I get from unicorndustdesigns.com. So head on over there if you need any DIY products. And then I'm going to take my paint inlay and spray it after I've given this thing a good thick coat, second coat. I gave it a good thick second coat of paint. While the paint is still wet, I spritzed down this paint inlay paper with a mister. And then I mist it a little bit more with some water. Now, it's not dripping wet. And then I'm pressing down, tap, 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 patting to get that excess water off. But I'm patting down that inlay into that wet paint, and then we let it dry. So after several hours, it's completely dry. And I'm going to mist it again with this water bottle. I'm not trying to soak it down. I'm just misting it with this mister. And then I'm going to take my little rag, a little soft rag, and I'm going to pat it. And then watch this beautiful process when you peel this back. If it doesn't peel back easily, then you need to wet it down a little bit more and wait a few seconds until it peels back. But look how beautiful this paint inlay turns out. It's absolutely gorgeous. Okay, I filled the holes in where the twine was and sanded it down. I'm going to take a Little Black Dress by DIY. I'm using that as my black with all of these DIYs. And I'm being careful not to get it on the edges because I want to keep that brown edge on there. Now, I painted that whole thing with black. Now, I have this black and white buffalo check plaid ribbon. I tied it together, this piece together in the center, and I'm just going to glue it across the top. And then I made a bow off camera, just a couple of loops on each side. There are plenty of bow tutorials out there. If you need a bow tutorial, I'm really not the girl to give you a bow tutorial. I do know how to make bows, but on camera, I am a fumble fingers when it comes to trying to teach you how to make bows. If you really, really need to know, I probably could make a tutorial. If you really, really want me to, you can ask me. Okay, so I'm going to take the Tight Bond Quick and Thick glue, which is amazing. It does exactly what it says. It's a tight bond, quick and thick, and a little bit of hot glue for a immediate hold until the other glue dries. And I'm just going to center it right there. And this beautiful fall DIY is done. Our last DIY is super simple. This is just a little wood sign I picked up at Dollar Tree, and I'm going to paint the center of it white with the linen white chalk paint by Rust-Oleum. Super easy. I'm going to take a Little Black Dress once again, and I'm going to paint the outside of the frame. I do the outside, I do the top rim, and then I do the side of the rim, and I do the inside of the rim. And I just took my time with this little paintbrush, and it was very easy to do. I did this outside. I don't think I showed you the inside because my head got in the way. Then I got these two beautiful copper leaves from Dollar General last year or year before for $1 a piece, and they have these cute little signs, tags attached to them. And we're going to snip those off, and we are going to save those little tags because we are going to use those. So we're going to set those aside. Once we get it all off, disassembled, we'll set those aside because we're going to use those. We're going to take Little Black Dress, and we're going to paint both of these leaves completely with Little Black Dress. And then when we are finished, they look like this. We are going to take some of that white paint on an old chippy brush and just do a light dry brush over the top and hit the high points to bring out the details in these beautiful leaves. I absolutely love the black and white on this, on these leaves. I love how this looks. Be sure and let me know what you think about the black and white in the comments below. I'm curious to what you think about it. Just kind of an idea that I had. I wanted to do something a little different. I did the Acorn video, and I wanted to do that was a little different than I normally do for fall. So just trying to think up some different ideas. So I'm going to take Big Top and seal these with Big Top so that the paint doesn't scratch off of the metal. And then I'm going to take some clear wax by DIY and just freshen up these little tags. They didn't need to be sealed, but I thought the wax would give them a little fresher look. Then just buff it out with my little cloth. Those edges are MDF, and so I just thought that the wax made them look a little more high-end. I'm going to take the black and white baker's twine that I got at Dollar Tree several years ago, and I've just been using it and using it. And I believe that you can get this during different holidays. So keep your eyes peeled during the holidays for the different colors of these baker's twine and pick them up. Don't snooze on them. Now I'm just going to put some in these tags. I'm going to tie a knot down close to the tag. I'm going to do that on both of them. And then I'm going to take both of them and arrange them in the length that I want. Oh, first I'm going to glue the leaves together so they don't move around. Then I'm going to arrange the tags to the lengths that I want. And then I'm going to put them in between that little loop. I'm going to put a little dot of hot glue in there, and then I'm going to tighten down that loop onto there. I'm going to tie a knot. Then I'm going to cut off the excess. Oh, I didn't do that yet. Yeah, I did cut off some of the excess. I made a little tiny finger bow. I'm going to put it there, but I end up not liking that, so just stay tuned. Stay tuned. When I cut off the little rooster tail up there. Rooster tail? Rooster comb, rooster something up there. Okay, so now I made a bow with the buffalo check ribbon because I liked that better. Now we're just going to glue these. I didn't even take the tags off, y'all. Nobody's going to see them. I'm going to put the hot glue on the high points of these leaves on the back and just glue it to the middle of this wood piece. I'm going to glue that bow down to the top of those leaves. Very simple. And this one was so easy, but I think it might be my favorite. It is so pretty. I don't know. I like the one with the inlay too. And those pumpkins, those wood pumpkins are so unique. I don't know. I'm having a hard time picking a favorite. And I did put the fray check on the edges of this ribbon as well. Okay, we are going to start out with this little decor piece that I picked up at Dollar Tree. It's very cute as is, but we're going to take off these embellishments and make it cuter. We are going to make all 3 of these pumpkins in this video today, each one in under 30 minutes, or maybe right at 30 minutes, depending on, you know, how fast I work. But they can be done in less than 30 minutes. I'm going to just remove these carefully. They come up pretty easy, but I'm being careful not to injure myself with my tools. Okay, now I've got this batting that I took out of an old pillow, an old throw pillow that I had that I was going to throw away, and instead I just took the stuffing out. And then I took some scrap fabric and I'm cutting little strips. I'm measuring them and then I'm cutting them to size. And then I started out putting a little piece of glue on there and turning it the wrong way, and because I want it to look like it has a finished edge. So I'm going to glue it like that. But you're going to see in a little bit that I learned how to work smarter, not harder. And here you're going to see my head in the way and all kinds of little eyelashes fluttering, because I was trying to see what I was doing, but also show you what I was doing and not get in the way. So I apologize for that. Camera angles are hard sometimes. But there, I'm going to put my little scissor under there and mash it down so that the glue adheres well. But you just want to overlap each little strip of fabric a little bit over the one previous. So I'm going to just put a little bit of glue on the wood instead, because that was much easier. Now I'm going to continue this process all the way around until I get the entire pumpkin covered. Then I'm going to take a little bit of dark wax on my brush and just brush it around the edges and just all over wherever I think it looks good. Now I'm going to take some twine and I'm going to wrap the stem, peduncle, whatever you choose to call this, because I like that look. Now, it also would be very cute to add some faux leaves to this. I did not put any leaves on the pumpkins today, but they would be very cute with some leaves. I was trying to just pretty much stay with fabric and ribbon, and so that's what I did. But I went ahead and just wrapped and wrapped and wrapped all the way around, made a little circle up on top until I got this entire stem covered with the twine. And then I like to take my lighter and burn off all the little fuzzies. I did not show this on camera. I've shown it several times before. And if you don't know that trick, just ask me and I'll show you in the next video, because it gets rid of all those fuzzies, and then it gives it just a little bit of a brown look here and there. So I like that look. Okay, so here's what it looks like at this stage. Now I took some little strips of canvas drop cloth. You know I love my canvas drop cloth, and a couple of little pieces of that twine and made them all the same length. And then I'm just going to crisscross it like you see me doing here. And then I'm going to pinch it in the center to make a little loopy, shaggy bow. I'm going to take a little piece of the canvas drop cloth, and I'm going to tie it really tight right in the center. And there you have your little bow. And we will put some hot glue on it, press it firmly, and this cute little pumpkin is done. This little wooden pumpkin I cut out of some scrap wood that I had in my stash, using the other pumpkin or another pumpkin I had as a template. So I am just going to use the Dark and Decrepit by DIY as a stain. It's beautiful, it's easy, it doesn't smell bad. I get all my DIY products from Sammy over at www.unicorndustdesigns.com. Her links are always linked in my description box below. I'm going to use this piece of scrap fabric. I'm going to cut 2 pieces of this scrap fabric. Now, why didn't I fold it over and cut both pieces at the same time, you ask? Very good question. Well, because I want one piece to be a tiny little bit bigger than the other. So I'm going to cut one, and then I'm going to pin it down. I'm going to cut the second one just slightly larger, because we're going to make a little pillow. Yes, we're going to make a tiny little pumpkin-shaped pillow. I'm going to use a little bit of hot glue. This little fine tip glue gun by Surebonder is perfect for these types of projects. I'm going to go all the way around the edges with the printed sides together. We call that right sides together when you're sewing. And I'm going to go from side to side so that it doesn't get all wonky, because if one's a little bit bigger than the other, sometimes you can get really off if you're not careful. So I'm just going to go side to side to side. And you can see that I drew my lines on the wrong side of the fabric, so it'll be inside the little pillow. Do you see that? Okay. I'm just going to glue. I'm going to leave a tiny little opening at the very top. And that stuffing from that old pillow, we're going to use some of that, and we're going to just stuff it down in here. I saw on my friend Leanne over at Simply Enjoying Crafting, someone commented on one of her viewers commented and said that you could use old dryer sheets, because once you've used them, they're soft and you're just going to throw them away anyway, and you could stuff them in to make these little stuffed pillows. So I thought that was a great idea. I didn't have any, so I just went ahead and used this old pillow that otherwise was going to be thrown away. So I'm just going to stuff this little pillow and poke out all the edges until it gets to the shape that I want it. And then I'm going to put a little hot glue in there and seal up that hole, just like so. And it doesn't have to be perfect because we are going to embellish it, and it's supposed to look a little bit organic, okay? All right, so now I'm just kind of fluffing and spreading it out. And then I'm going to take some hot glue and I'm going to glue all around and then press it down firmly. See how easy this is? Same thing. We're going to wrap this stem, this peduncle, all the way around. The entire thing. Second verse, same as the first. Now, I wish it was really this quick, but I've sped this up just so we don't all get bored, okay? But this is exactly what we do. We're just going to wrap it, wrap it, wrap it, or wrap it, wrap it. And I promise you, these DIYs are so easy. These pumpkins are so easy to make, and I think they're so cute for a shelf sitter. These smaller ones could totally fit on a tier tray. I like to put them on my piano, on a little shelf, in a little cubby. They're just so cute to sit around. Now, I'm going to take some more of this scrap fabric. These are just little pieces of scraps. I mean, you don't even have to have very big pieces. And I'm going to cut them, snip it and rip it, snip it and rip it, and it just makes the cutest little shabby bows. So I'm going to put a bunch of pieces of the colors that I want together, tie them up in the middle, make sure I get it right in the center, tie it really tight, and then we have a little shabby shaggy bow. Trim it up to match, shake it out, glue it down. Now, I will tell you, we're going to put a little dark wax on this one too. Just dirty it up a little bit. It just looked a little too clean to be a pumpkin. This pumpkin needs to look like it's been in the patch for a little bit. Okay, we're going to put the bow on now. Okay, and just shake it out, make it fluffy. But it would not stand up by itself, y'all, because just adding that little bit of pillow on the front made it fall forward. So I had this little wood round in my stash. You could use anything. You could use some Jenga blocks, you could use some scrap wood, anything. Just make a little base. And so this is how it turned out. Super simple, super quick. This pumpkin came from Dollar Tree, and it's one of those that has some of that beautiful glitter paper on it that we all love so much. Now, it really was a pretty pumpkin to start with, but I wanted to make it something else. So I peeled all that paper off, and it came off fairly easy. And then this already had brown edges, but I'm going to take the dark and decrepit just to, kind of seal it in and make it a little bit richer. And then I'm going to take canvas drop cloth. Surprise, surprise, because I'm going to either use some chiffon lace ribbon or canvas drop cloth these days. Those are my favorites. Okay, so I traced around it. Now make sure that you glue it down the right way. I'm going to use some Tite Bond Quick and Thick, and I'm showing you with this little silicone spatula how easy it is to spread it around and make sure that you get it all the way out to the edges. And then you are going to just press down firmly and smooth it out until you get it all over it. Now it's going to dry super fast. I decided I didn't like it over the stem, so I went ahead and snipped that little piece off up there at the top. And then I did fray the edges a teeny tiny little bit, not a lot, but I did just kind of rub it around the edges. Now with that same canvas drop cloth, so this is going to be the same color on top of the same color, I went ahead and cut some strips and ripped them. Snip it and rip it. It was a little tougher to rip because it's a little bit thicker, but I love how it sort of curled up like that. And that was a little bit of a seam on that end. That's how come I cut that off. And then we're just going to snip it, and I had to kind of get it close to me to get some leverage. So I had to rip it, snip it and rip it. And then I'm going to measure them to see how long I want them and snip that at the bottom. Okay. Come on, Kendra. Okay, then I'm going to cut them all until they fit. Cut the edges at an angle and fray it a little bit. Oh my goodness, I love how this one turned out. Okay, just cut it and fray it a little bit. And the more rugged it is, the better it is. Rugged, rustic, whatever you want to call it. Okay, I don't know why I'm showing you all this, because I guess I thought you needed to know how to do this. Like you might not be able to figure it out. Or I was daydreaming a little bit while I was editing. Okay, so then we're going to take, I've got it all laid out. Then we're going to take our Tight Bond Quick and Thick and just put a little bit under it. And I really just want the center of it to be glued down. I figured that out on about the third one because I want the edges to kind of I don't know what you would call it. Just like this. I want them to look frayed, but I want them to not lay down flat. I want some dimension. Okay, you picking up what I'm putting down. I'm quoting my friend Sammy. You picking up what I'm putting down. Okay, so see how I'm just making a line in the center, and then I'm going to push that glue in there so it gets in all the fibers. And then there we go. We're just going to make, that's the look I was going for, whatever you want to call it. And then I just love it. So then we're going to wrap some twine around this stem as well. But I had this brown and white baker's twine in my stash. So I thought, well, this would be a little bit different since it's a little bit different fabric. And I love the way this one turned out. You'll have to let me know if you like this brown and white baker's twine on the stem, or would you have used regular twine? I really like how this looked, and the same method as the other stems. And then same thing. Let's put a little dark wax on it and dirty it up a little bit. And I didn't even wait for this to dry. It just dries so fast. And then I took a couple pieces of ribbon and just cut it to make a little messy bow, and just pinched it together, some canvas drop cloth, and made a little bow. And that's how simple this one is. Hello friends, welcome. Today I have 4 fantastic fall DIYs with a little twist. There's a little twist in the middle of the video that you're not going to want to miss. So let's get started crafting. We are going to start our first DIY with this chunk of scrap wood that came from the dumpster dive. If you have not seen the dumpster dive video, I'm going to link it in the description box below. It's pretty entertaining, so you might want to go watch it. This is a heavy chunk of wood, very solid, and then we're going to use the pumpkin mold from Hello Pumpkin. It's an IOD mold. It's a very beautiful mold. It's a thinner piece, but we're going to use it with this chunky piece of wood. Now I'm going to make all of these pumpkins today look like metal or a little galvanized or whatever. So we're going to use this gray that I mixed up. We're going to use some beadboard. We're going to use a little black dress by DIY and some metallic by Folk Art, metallic silver by Folk Art. This was some aged gray by Rust-Oleum and a little bit of old school that I mixed in with it, old school by DIY. And I'm just going to paint this entire pumpkin piece and the leaf with this gray. And it went pretty fast with the magic of editing, but this paint went on this mold really smoothly. Now I'm going to put all my little paints in this little plastic piece that was going to be thrown away. I don't throw anything away because it's potentially a little paint palette. And I'm going to mix a little bit of gray, a little bit of white, so that I have a very, very light gray. And I'm just going to pounce it all over with a makeup sponge. You could do it with virtually anything that you want. I just prefer the look that you get with the makeup sponge. And you can see that I'll pounce it on my little silicone mat that I work on. And then I'm going to pounce it all over this pumpkin in the little nooks and crannies. Then I'm going to add a little bit more white to it. Then I'm going to dab it all over, and then I'm going to add a little black to it. And then I'm going to add a little more gray to it. Then I'm going to add a little more white to it. I'm just going to keep adding the colors until it looks like I want it to look. And at the very end, I'll add that metallic silver to give it that metallic look. Gee, how that works. Okay, so I'm going back. See, I'm going to add, and I never clean the sponge. I keep using the same sponge. So I've got all those colors in the sponge. Now I'm going to use a clean sponge, and I'm almost like dry sponging a little bit. Like I don't want gobs of that color on there. And so I keep dabbing back over on the part that I dabbed off. I'm dabbing on, dabbing off, and just putting it all over the pumpkin and the leaf to get the look that I want. Then I'm going to take, once it's completely dry, I go in with some clear wax by DIY. Now, I get all my DIY products from Sammy over at Unicorn Dust Designs. UnicornDustDesigns.com is her website. It's linked in the description box below in all of my videos. And I'm going to use some of the DIY barn quilt. Now, this is a JRV cottage color, and it's a little different than the regular DIY paints. It is an all-in-one. It has a sealer in it, and it has a different texture to it as well, but it needs a really good stir. So I give this 2 good coats. This was the first coat. This is what it looks like after 2 good coats. I absolutely love this piece of wood. Now I'm trying to decide where I want to put this beautiful silver pumpkin. Do I want to have that little knot in the wood, that little split in the wood? I really did kind of like how it looked, but I really liked this side and with that little knot in it and the way that the wood grain went sideways. I don't know. I just really liked this side better. So then I'm going to take my little finger sander and I'm going to sand the edges just a little bit. I don't want it to look too terribly rustic, but just a little bit, okay? So I'm going to sand the edges down a little bit. I'm going to sand around that knot hole a little bit, and then just across the top. Now, I put my pumpkin on there so I could see what was going to show. I don't want to, do any extra sanding than I have to. Then I'm just going to take a paper towel and get all the crumbs off. I'm going to use my Tite Bond Quick and Thick to glue these pieces down. This stuff does exactly what it says. It glues, it's thick and it glues quick. So I'm going to, sometimes I use hot glue to help it hold quicker if I'm going to be working with it, but this is the last step. So I'm just going to put it on there, and it dries within minutes, just a couple minutes. And you have not a complete hold, but good enough that you can move it around. Like I can pick it up and move the piece around. So this is how it looks. And although I love how it looks, I thought it needed a little extra something. So I had this little black and white gingham ribbon, just some little scraps of it in my drawer. So I thought I'll just make a little border with it. Just put a little on the bottom, and I didn't have very much. I just had a few little scraps, and I had a couple little bows that I had made previously and didn't use them. So I thought, well, I'll glue this little bow up there, and I almost tried to piece together another strap across the top, but I decided that was too much, and I ended up loving it like this. So let me know what you liked better, with or without the bow. This DIY is so easy. This is an old piece of fencing that someone gave me, and it's the IOD smaller pumpkin mold and a piece of tin foil. I'm just taking my finger sander, I'm sanding off around the edges where I cut it. I cut it down to this size. I cut it where those 2 screw holes were exactly where I wanted them, so I can make a little hanger. And then I'm going to sand off all the dirt, and you'll see when I flip it over what I'm talking about right there. So I give it a good sanding to get all that little dirt and grime off, and then I'm going to spray it down with some disinfectant and wipe it down, and then I'm going to put it outside in the sun to dry. And in Texas right now, it's 100 degrees or better, so it will dry super fast, but I left it out there for a couple of hours so there's no germs. Now I'm going to use a little bit of our Tight Bond Quick and Thick and spread it all over the top of this pumpkin. This is a method that I absolutely fell in love with. It was just kind of an idea that came to me, and I don't know that I've seen anybody do it. If someone's done it, I haven't seen them do it. I'm going to just take this piece of foil. It's just regular aluminum foil. If I had it to do all over again, I probably would use a heavy-duty foil instead of the thinner foil. But I thought the thinner foil would show the details a little better, but I think the heavy-duty foil would do just as good. But I'm going to wrap it around, and then very carefully, this is why I think the heavy-duty foil might work better right in this to not rip so easily right here. But when wrapping it around these little tedious parts, like with this peduncle. So it works though, like where I had a little space where it ripped, I just glued another piece on top, and you can't even tell because it's kind of all wadded up. And so I just pressed it all down around, and then I'm going to press it firmly all over the entire pumpkin until you can see all the details. And you can see I'm just ripping off a little piece. I'm going to put some glue right there, and then I'm going to just stick a little piece on there, glue it down, and nobody but me and you know that that happened. Now I'm going to press with my fingers firmly but carefully until you can see all those details. And then I took a pencil eraser, and when it got a little bit down in the details a little bit more, because I couldn't get down in there with my fingers. So there you can see I just used the edge of that pencil eraser and got down in those details to bring out those details. And now for the magic. We are going to use some DIY dark wax and just rub it over. Now it doesn't absorb in like it does when you use it on top of paint. But if you just let it dry, it will. So I'm just putting a lot on there. Like not a lot in quantity, but a lot like in the crevices. And then I just wiped back so it wasn't, pooling everywhere. Now I'm going to use Shipwrecked by DIY. and a little brush. You could use your cloth as well. In a future DIY on this video, I do use a cloth, but you can use a cloth as well. And then I'm just going to put it in random places so that it looks, you know, kind of old and patinaed. Patinaed, is that a word? Sure it is. I live in Texas. We can make up our own words. And then I'm going to use that cloth that I had the dark wax on and just tap, tap, tap very gently. And then I'm going to use that same cloth and go over this piece of wood to seal it. And then we're just going to glue that pumpkin to the wood and put a little gingham bow on top of our hanger, which I did not show you. I did not get it on camera, but you just put your little hanger, wire hanger or ribbon hanger through your holes, and you have this very simple, very cute pumpkin DIY. Okay, I promised you a twist. Here's the twist. You say, but Kendra, I don't find scrap wood. I don't have IOD molds. I can't afford them. They're expensive. Yes, they are. Okay, I'm going to show you how you can make very similar DIYs using Dollar Tree items. Yes, you can. Let's get started. Let's use a Dollar Tree canvas and a fake wooden pumpkin decor piece. Now, they have those canvases at Dollar Tree all the time, and you can find pumpkin decor pieces at Dollar Tree every year during their fall decor season. I'm choosing to use this one. I decided that I was going to sand off this little E. For whatever reason, my paint was dark enough to cover it up, but I don't know why I decided to sand it off, but I did. Now I'm going to use the same barn quilt because we're trying to replicate our original piece. I did 3 coats to get that to cover that canvas piece. And I painted that pumpkin with that same gray as we did our original pumpkin, our mold. And I'm doing the same exact technique on here as I did on the mold. You just pouncing all the colors on until we get the look that we want, the dark, the white, the gray, the light, and then finally the metallic, and then sealing it with clear wax by DIY. And here is our final result. I think it looks great. I gave it a thumbs up. Yes, sealing it with our clear wax by DIY with the makeup brushes that I get on Amazon. I have them linked in my Amazon store in the description box if you're interested in purchasing some. They are amazing for stenciling and waxing and painting and all kinds of things. Now I'm kind of placing it on there to see how it's going to fit, and this is what the canvas looks after I painted 3 coats. I didn't have very much of this ribbon left, but enough to give us one little strip across the top, and I'm going to glue that down across the top, and then we're going to put the pumpkin on. Now I had some black and white baker's twine that I picked up at Dollar Tree, and I've had it for a while. You also can get black and white baker's twine on Amazon or at Dollar Tree. So I was trying to figure out where I wanted to put that bow, so I decided I'm going to put the bow up there. I'm going to take the baker's twine, wrap it around the little peduncle stem, whatever you want to call that, and just tie a simple little knot right there. And I kind of like to do it over to the side. You could do it in the middle. You can not do it at all. But I like the way that looks. So we're going to glue our little bow up in the corner. You could put it on the pumpkin if you want. But we're trying to make it look similar to our original one. And we're going to use some Type Bond Quick and Thick. Again, my favorite glue because it works so good. And I may have put a little too much glue because when I put it down on our canvas, it kind of oozed out a little bit. But that's okay. I would rather have too much and have it stick than not have enough. So I'm kind of pressing it down on that canvas good, and see there, it kind of oozed out a little, but we can wipe that off. And then I'm going to put a couple little Dollar Tree clamps on there to hold it until it is done. And I think this one turned out pretty good. Let me know what you think. Okay, so hang with me on this one. These planks come from Dollar Tree. You get 6 in a pack, and they're a decent thickness, but because we want it to look a little bit more like our original piece, we're going to glue 2 of them together. And we're just going to spread our glue all over, and then we're going to clamp 2 of them together. Now, Dollar Tree does have the, I'm not sure if I say this right, I say Aleene's tacky glue, and it works really good for this. I've done it numerous times with these wood pieces. And then I use my little Dollar Tree clamps to hold it together until it dries. And then I'm going to sand the edges in case there's a little excess glue and get rid of that. And then I'm going to take Dark and Decrepit from DIY and a sponge. And I'm just going to do front, back, and sides with this sponge and stain this wood piece so that it's going to resemble our little piece of scrap wood that we had in our original piece. Now, in case you don't have a drill, we're not going to, oh, I did this off camera that I sanded it, and so I'm just showing you that I sanded it. But if you don't have a drill, we're not going to drill holes. We're going to do an alternative way to do that too. Now, these little pumpkins you can get at Hobby Lobby or at Dollar Tree. Now, I traced around this. I don't know what I was thinking. So you can paint this on just in case you don't have foil, I guess, because in the end I use foil. But just in case you don't have any foil, you can paint and use that same technique we used. Yeah, so I went to the trouble to do this and then waxed it, did the whole thing, okay? And after I finished the entire thing, I put a little bow with the baker's twine, and then I made a little hanger. I put 2 pieces of that baker twine together and put a knot on each end so that it would, I would have something to glue down on the back. Made a little hanger. You could use a wire. You could use wire. You could drill holes and do the wire hanger. If you have some wire and you have holes, I don't know if Dollar Tree has any of that kind of galvanized wire. Let me know in the comments below if you've ever seen that at Dollar Tree, if they have any wire. And I like to put a little piece of cloth. I love my canvas drop cloth, but I like to do that just to give it a little more stability. So this is what I ended up with. And that was cute, but it really wasn't like the original piece, because that original piece had texture to it. So I decided that I needed to, well, I had to sand this off because it was going to show behind this little wooden piece. So I ended up sanding and using a wet wipe to remove the paint that was going to show behind the wooden piece, okay? Hang with me now, hang with me. I'm going somewhere with this. And then once I got it, I used the Dark and Decrepit and just went over it again to, you know, fix my boo-boo. And then I took my hot glue gun, my fine tip hot glue gun. You could use a regular hot glue gun. It would work just as good. And I made like lines where you would have lines on a pumpkin. Like I made details. I made my own details. So this was easy. You just have to use a steady pressure. Okay, make lines in there, make some details, and hot glue dries fast. Just wave it in there like you really do care. Okay, then I got my tin foil. Then I decided I wanted to kind of crinkle it up to give it a little bit more wrinkles in there so the dark wax would sit in those wrinkles a little bit more, okay? So that's what I did, and then look when I pressed down in there. It's like magic, y'all. It doesn't take much to impress me, okay? So now I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut around this. And like I said, you know, if I can suggest something, I would suggest going ahead and using the heavy-duty foil if you have it. I did have it, but I didn't use it. And then it's going to be the same process we used with the mold. We're just going to glue that down to the back. I made little snips all the way around, which is totally not necessary. I used to bake cakes and I would cover my cake boards, and this is what I had to do. But this foil would just wrap right around. your pumpkin. You do not need to cut those slits. In fact, the slits almost made more boo-boos where it tore. See? Yeah, so I had to repair a couple little places because it did that. So I would suggest not doing those little slits like I did. So just putting down some glue and smearing it out to the edge. And I love my little silicone. Anytime you find those little mini silicone spatulas, grab you a couple and keep a couple in your arsenal. Yeah, I ripped that, but it all worked out. The foil is so forgiving. Like, you can just mash it and poke it and glue on top of it. And it's almost like paper mache or something like that when you're doing that. You just put some on top of it and you can't even tell. So I pressed it all down around all the details, just like the other one we did, and putting the dark wax on, and then did the shipwrecked for that verdigris look. And I really, really like how this turned out. So I felt like this looked more like our original piece that we're trying to imitate. And I went ahead and used my cloth. This is just an old t-shirt that I cut up. It was an old t-shirt that was going in the trash, and I just cut it up and used it. So I think this one turned out really good. So I liked it way better. So I'm going to sand that back down again a little bit around the edges, just a little bit. And so it looks a little bit distressed. Clean up my space, get rid of all the crumbs. I can't work can't work with all the crumbs. And then we're going to just use our Type Bond, a little bit of hot glue so it stays in place. And stick that down there. And I kept debating whether I wanted to put that little bow back on there. I kept taking it off and putting it back on, but I felt like it was covering up all those really cool details right there. Like, I love those little details. So I thought about putting it up in the corner, and I just decided to leave it off. Just leave it off. So let me know what you think about this. All of these DIYs today are going to be using these styrofoam pumpkins from the Dollar Tree. So I'm going to start by taking the stem out. I'm going to cut a little hole in the center. These pumpkins are hollow. And then I'm going to take Sandy Blonde by DIY Paints, and I'm going to coat the entire pumpkin with Sandy Blonde because I'm going to be using these corn husks that I got at Dollar Tree after the season last year on clearance. And if there's any gaps in between these husks, I don't want the orange to shine through. So if a little bit of this Sandy Blonde shines through, it'll just look natural. So I'm going to take these husks and I'm going to glue them at the top. I'm going to glue them at the bottom. Now, they are kind of stiff. If you wanted to soak them in a little bit of water to soften them up, you probably could, but I really didn't want to work with wet corn husks with my painted surface. So what I did was, see how it just popped right up? So what I did was I got out some little straight pins. I have a little container of, it just kept popping up on me. I got a little container of straight pins. And I just pinned them at the top and pinned them at the bottom. And I glued it too. But I used the straight pins to kind of hold it down. A little extra added security. You're going to see in just a little bit. I worked with it for a little bit. And then I got the straight pins out. Now, I went in those where the surface was indented. The grooves. I kind of went in there first, and then I went back in and filled in. Well, I don't know. There's really no rhyme or reason to how I did this. I just went around, and then I went back and filled in over the tops because it just worked better that way. I don't know. That's just how I did it. So I did this entire pumpkin using that method. So see, I just went around a little bit, and then I came back, and when we get done, you're not going to see those little pins at all. And then I just came back around and use the shorter pieces to do those overlays on top. So, and if there were some little pieces that hung out, I didn't mind because it just made it look a little more rustic. Now I had these leaves in my stash that I've had in there for a long time. And then I had this little piece of a branch that I cut off that tree out in my yard. It's not really a tree, it's kind of a bush. And I just poked that down in there with those leaves. I'm going to use a little bit of Spanish moss here in just a little bit. I'm going to glue that leaf down so it quits popping up. A little bit of Spanish moss, and that's all we're going to do to this little DIY. This was so easy. I think it's so cute. Oh, no, no, no. Oh, no, I'm not done yet. I am going to keep poking Spanish moss around here for just a little bit longer. But I took some DIY dark wax. Okay, I just had a little bit left on my brush from a previous project. And I just rubbed it all over these corn husks. It looks like I'm rubbing really hard. I'm not rubbing really hard. I'm gently rubbing. And I'm rubbing that to darken up those husks a little bit. Okay, let's grab another one of these styrofoam pumpkins out of my stash. Yes, I had all of these in my stash. I didn't even buy any. Now, I'm going to grab some aluminum foil. Yep, I'm coming back to the aluminum foil to make some more aluminum foil pumpkins. I really loved this technique that I used in a video a couple weeks ago. And so I'm going to use it again, and you will probably see me use it again and again on some other projects. So I'm just going to wrap this pumpkin in this aluminum foil. Super simple. This is most of these in this video are super simple. And so just going to wrap it up. Let me know what your favorite season to decorate for is. I really love fall. Fall is one of my favorites. Thanksgiving is probably one of my favorite. It probably is my favorite holiday, even though it's really just like one day, Thanksgiving Day. But we like to, we travel for Thanksgiving. My husband and I go to Branson every year for Thanksgiving. And I love Thanksgiving. It's just a time of year where we can focus on giving thanks. We should give thanks every day of the year because God is so faithful, and we should be thankful to Him. We should be thankful just for all the blessings that He's given us, but also thankful to others too, and just be thankful and grateful for all the things that people do for us and all the blessings that we have in our life. So you can see that I'm just wrapping this foil around, and I had a little extra piece, and so I'm just putting that glue in there, and it's very forgiving. It's going to be kind of like a little paper mache. What do you call that when you do that? I guess it is paper mache, right? And then we're just going to patch it up, and you can't even tell. We're going to take the dark wax by DIY, just like we did in that other video. If you didn't see that, I'm going to try to leave that linked in the description box below, and you can see that one that I did. I'm going to use this one is called Shipwrecked by DIY, and it gives it that verdigris look, and I love that look. And so then I'm going to take a little tiny piece of a spindle, put some dark wax on it, decided I didn't really like how that looked, so I took some, I believe this is Aviary by DIY, and added a little green to it, because if you look at the stems on, or peduncles as they are really called, on pumpkins, they really are kind of a greenish brown. They're really kind of gross looking. But anyway, I am digressing here. Then I'm going to just fill that up with some Spanish moss, that's what that's called, and put our little stem in, and I think this turns out adorable. I hope that you're enjoying these pumpkin DIYs. If you're new to my channel, my name is Kendra, and you are watching Late Night Creations, and I'm so glad that you're here. If you've been around a while, thank you. Thanks so much for hanging out. Now, let's get back to crafting. Okay, another one of these little pumpkins from Dollar Tree. And this one is going to be a little more labor intensive, not really labor intensive, but it's going to take a little more work. I painted this entire thing with cake batter by DIY, and now I'm going to do a light brushing or heavy dry brushing of vintage linen over it. I get all my DIY paints and IOD products from Sammy at Unicorn Dust Designs. She has a website, www.unicorndustdesigns.com, and she has all the IOD products, DIY products, Saltwash. She has a lot of thrifted items, a lot of her upcycled items, and she has a beautiful website over there. So I have her linked in the description box below. I encourage you to go and check that website out. Now I'm going to use this mold, and I cannot remember the name of it, and I usually put it on the screen for you, but I will have it in the description box below for you. And I'm going to use the DOS air dry clay, which I absolutely love. I did not like doing air dry clay in the molds until I found this particular clay, and the trick to it is working with it when it's very moist and not letting it get dry. I keep it in the Ziploc bag and don't let it get dry. And I have heard that if you keep a wet wipe or a wet paper towel in there with it, it helps it to stay moist as well. Now when I pull it out of the molds, sometimes I have a little bit of a crusty edge there, and I just tap it down around the edges. Now I have all of these clay molds all out of the molds, and now we're going to glue it to the pumpkin while they're still pliable. So I'm going to use the Type Bond Quick and Thick and a little spatula to get that glue all the way out to the edges, because you want those edges to adhere. Now it looks like this is crooked on here, but it's really not. Now I'm going to tap very gently around the edges. You don't want to mash or rub these too much because you're going to press out your details. So I'm just going to gently tap around the edges so that it adheres nicely. And I'm going to do that with all of these pieces of these beautiful molds. I wish I could think what the name of this is. I think it's something like Flourish or something like that. But I will put it in the description box in case you're interested in what it's called. Now I'm going to take cake batter with a soft brush while these are still wet. These have probably been out of the mold about 15-20 minutes at this point. And I'm going to take this little soft bristled brush, and I'm going to gently, with a lot of paint, I put a lot of paint on my paintbrush, and I'll just move that paint around on these molds. And I'm going to paint them all in this cake batter. And now, when I finish that part, what am I going to do? I'm going to let it dry. And in the meantime, I'm going to take this little peg. I bought these somewhere. I have a whole bag of these. I do not know why I bought a whole bag of these, but I probably needed one for a project, so a whole bag was good, so I'd have some in my stash. I'm sure. Who knows? Anyway, or like my friend Favi says, any hoozle, I'm going to use that as our peduncle on this one. So then I decided I needed some gold on it. So I got the little gold. This is by DIY. It's called Gilded Gold Wax. Gold Gilded Wax. Something like that. And I'm just going to rub a little bit here and there so it just looks like, you know, it's got some of the gold, maybe had gold and some of it got rubbed off, or a little bit got rubbed on, or I don't know. I'm just rubbing a little gold wax on it. If you decide to make one, you can rub it all over the whole thing if you want to. I am not a gold girl, so I was just trying to make all of these look very different. And so I do love this mold. Now, if I had done it, I would have done it in grays and silvers. If I had done it. I did do this one. These are my hands with my unkept nails. But if I were doing it for my house and my decor, is what I was trying to say, I would have done it in grays and silvers. But I do think this gold is beautiful. Okay, so now I needed some leaves, but these leaves were very orange and very yellow and very bright and very whimsical. So I just took that gilding wax, and I just dabbed it with a stencil brush. I think this is a stencil brush or some kind of brush, and I just dabbed it all over there and rubbed it in with my finger until I got as much on there as I wanted. I didn't really want it to have full coverage, but I just wanted to tone down those bright colors. Now I'm going to use some of this beautiful crocheted lace that I love and a little bit of that gold ribbon that I got at Dollar Tree and make a little messy bow, just a simple little messy bow, and then I'm just going to put a little loop, simple one loop bow on top of that. And then I'm going to just randomly glue these little leaves around, and I had to just kind of poke them in there, and then I wadded them up in some places to help them to stand up a little bit. See how I just kind of pushed that back there, and yeah, just have to do that. And then this is how it turned out. Let me know how you like the gold pumpkin. Okay, for our final pumpkin in this video, we're going to use this white styrofoam one and some Farm Fresh by DIY, which is one of my favorite colors they have. And I'm going to paint the entire thing with one thin coat because we're going to use some salt wash. We're going to give this some texture. Now, this little thing had been stored in a tote with some other fall pieces from last year, a year before. I've had these in my stash for a while, and so it had been a little bit beat up. But we're not going to worry about that. Now, I'm going to make a base. Now, this was an old candle lid, and this is the one I'm going to use. But if you don't have a wooden candle lid, I'm going to show you some options. You can use one of these little round wood bases that you can get at Joann's Fabric or Hobby Lobby for about $1, $1.25, something like that. Or you can get these little wood rounds. You can glue 2 or 3 of them together. You've seen me do that in previous videos. Or you can just use one by itself. Or you don't have to make a wood base at all. But I'm going to use this old candle lid that, you know, I don't ever throw these away because they make great wood bases or wood rounds. Now I'm going to paint that wood base with that Farm Fresh. Now I'm mixing Farm Fresh and Salt Wash to give me to give me some texture. And I did the entire thing, and then now I'm going back with what I had left over and just globbing on, you like that good word? Globbing on some extra texture. Now on this, it had this little groove where a little rubber seal was, and I'm just going to take some twine and I'm just going to glue it around that. I'm just going to wrap it around and glue it. I'm going to glue it in a couple places, and then I'm just going to go around and around and around until I get however much twine on there I want. And then I'm going to glue the pumpkin to this little base. Oh, first, I'm going to use my lighter to get all those little fuzzies off of the twine. Very carefully not to start a fire. Now I'm going to use the the Tite Bond Quick and Thick. Oh, I have so much trouble. I want to say that the wrong way every time. And some hot glue and set that right on top. It's still a little wet. I didn't put the texture on the bottom. Okay, I have these letters that I got from Temu. If you saw that haul that I did, I got these letters, and then I have this little tag. I had them in my stash for a while, and I have this scrapbook paper. And I cut these, I traced the tag onto the paper and cut that out, and I was trying to see which one of the tags I liked with the letter and those leaves that I'm going to use. I want to call it florals, but they're not florals, they're leaves, little leaf stems. So I just glued it on there, and I'm using my little finger sander to sand the edges, and then that brush that has the dark wax in it. I didn't add dark wax. I just used what was in there already. And I'm going to do the same thing for the little K. I'm just going to use the dark wax that's in that brush and dark wax the K and the beads. I just put them in my hand and rolled them around with that brush and dark wax the beads and my hand at the same time. Gluing the little K on the tag. This little tag turns out so cute, y'all. And then I'm going to put a tiny little bit of glue on my finger, roll that twine around in my finger, and that glue dries really fast, so it dries the end of that twine fast, and it makes it so easy to push that end of that twine through those beads. And now I'm going to put it through the tag, and then I'm going to put it back up through that hole in the beads again. So here we go. Okay, then I'm going to tie a knot really close to that last bead that we put on. And there's our little tag. Ta-da! Okay, now we're going to set that aside and work on our pumpkin again. So it's all dry, and then we've got that. See, I told you it got beat up a little bit, but that's okay. We're going to put it in the back. I put a little mark where I knew where the front was. Now, I got these. Where did I buy these? I'm thinking I got these at Hobby Lobby when they were on sale. I think. Okay, now I'm going to poke them in this styrofoam, but they are flimsy, so they won't poke in there. So I'm going to use this little skewer to make holes in the pumpkin so that I can put the leaves in here. So I decide where I'm going to put them, and I just poke a little hole in, and then poke a bigger hole in. I have two different sizes of skewers. So I'm going to poke that down in there, and then I do use a little hot glue to secure them where I want them. And I just keep cutting them and poking them in there. And yeah, I thought that one was going to poke, but it didn't. And I never claim to be good at arranging florals or leaves or anything. I just do it until I think it looks good, until it looks good to my eye. So I think that's the important thing. If you like it, then, and it's for your home decor, then that's all that matters. So I just kept poking holes until I got it all in there. And then I'm going to use my little bow dabber that my friend Brandy from Making It My Own DIYs gave me. And so if you don't know about her, she's got Making It My Own DIYs channel, and she makes some beautiful things over there. So you need to go over and check her channel out. If you don't know about her, she has a goal to reach. She wants to reach 100,000 subscribers by the end of October, I believe, and she is at 80,000. So if y'all haven't subscribed to her channel, please go over there and show her some love and help her reach her goal. Okay, so I didn't even have to cut that. It just ripped off. So we're just going to fluff it up, and then I'm going to add in a bunch of Spanish moss, and I'm going to go around the base of it, but I'm also going to pinch and poke. I'm going to pinch off the moss and poke it in so that it fills in all those holes. I didn't have to use that many leaves, and then I'm just, I wish the camera angle was a little bit better here. And then I put a little hot glue in to secure things in place. I didn't use a lot of hot glue, just little dot here and there. And then I'm going to glue that bow right in the front. And then I didn't show you gluing the bow, okay. And then I just tied that little tag onto one strand of that bow and just let it dangle. And that one is done. Okay, I promised you scrap wood DIY, and here's our scrap wood. This is just a piece of random scrap wood. I don't even know where it came from. And these are the handles from those foam paintbrushes. Yep. So we use these a lot in Sunday school with my class, and I have them to take the handles off, and we save them. And so I measured them out. I cut them all the same length with my little tiny mini miter saw. I didn't show you that this time. I've shown you that in previous videos. And then I'm going to glue 2 together, and then I'm going to glue 1 on top. I'll show you that when I get the pairs glued together, and then we're going to glue the 3rd one on top, and we're going to make some tiny little legs. Just like that. It's just going to be 3 little pieces of wood glued together to make some little legs. And then we are going to take vintage linen and paint this entire block of wood, front, back, sides, the whole thing. And then when it's completely dry, I'm going to take layered chocolate and barely dry brush a little bit over, just bringing it in from the sides, using the side of my brush to do the edges, kind of like I'm outlining it, just to give the edges some definition. Because we are going to stamp on this thing with the is it called wood planks? What's it called? What is that? I'm doing the same thing on the legs, the same painting technique on the legs. But what is that stamp called? Wood planks, barnwood planks. I think I'm going to show you. Barn planks stamp. We're going to use that with stone gray ink, and we're just going to ink it up. There's several different stamps with this set. I absolutely love it. I get all my IOD products, my DIY products, my Saltwash products from Sammy at unicorndustdesigns.com. Her website is always linked in my description box. You should go over there and check out her website. She's got a lot of thrifted items and upcycled items to buy, so please go check her out. She also has a whatnot, what do we call that? Whatnot store, whatnot show, and that's a lot of fun too if you're not familiar with whatnot. There's also a guy over there, I think his channel is called Just Trying. His name is Leon. His show is a lot of fun, and he has a lot of really cool vintage things as well. Okay. So now we got the barn planks on, and now we're going to glue the legs. I did the bottom, and I can't decide how to use those stamps. So if any of you have used those stamps with the barnwood planks, let me know how you used them and send me pics. Let me know, because I couldn't figure out how to use those and make them look right. So I'm just going to glue these little legs. I do go back. I had to sand some of them because they wouldn't sit. They wouldn't sit straight. I didn't glue them on straight or something. So I had to go back and sand them, and then I went back and touched up that white paint on the bottom. But I just glued the legs on like that. And this little DIY is done, and such a cute little riser for our pumpkins. I'm so glad you joined me today, because we are going to make this gorgeous pumpkin decor piece with very little glue. So we're going out to the shop and we're going to cut some wood. I'm going to cut all of these about 10 inches. I'm going to use one to measure the next one. And you know what? They don't all end up exactly the same length, but that's okay, because this is a rustic piece. Just using this scrap wood that I have out in the shop, and just easy peasy. I'm going to line that saw blade up with my line and cut it just like that. Now I'm going to take it in where it's nice and cool, because it was 111 degrees today outside and I was in that hot shop cutting that wood. So I'm going to take this in. I'm using this 60 or 80 grit sandpaper and just giving it a quick little sand. We want it to stay rustic. Now I'm going to use the Vintage Linen Paint by DIY and going to just pour some into this little takeout lid. And I'm just going to give it a rough paint job. I'm not looking for any kind of full coverage at all. I'm using a chippy brush so that it looks rustic. And I'm also going to put another coat of paint on top of this, but I'm going to paint all the sides, the front, the back, all of it with this same technique. All of the pieces involved. Then I'm going to take Summer Crush by DIY Paint, and I get all my DIY paints from Sammy at www.unicorndustdesigns.com. You can go over there, you can get all your DIY or recycled papers and all kinds of vintage goodies for sale over there. So go and check out her website. I'll have it linked in the description box below. And just go over there and go shopping and have a good time. I love the DIY paints. I'm going to just do the same technique with the Summer Crush. And this is a beautiful orange. It's great for fall. Now, instead of using glue, we're going to make our own little kind of dowel sticks here. Now, I'm using these skewers. And I'm showing you that I got a drill bit that's the same size to drill my holes. And this was one of those 36-inch skewers from Dollar Tree that they only have in the summertime, but they're a little bit bigger around than the regular ones. And so I've just marked off how long I want them. I'm going to take my miter shears, and it cuts these just like butter. So easy. I hesitate because I don't want it to fling it across the room. So I'm being a little bit gentle with how I cut them. Then I'm going to drill a hole, and then I'm going to put these little pegs in, making my own little pegs. And we're going to, you've probably seen furniture that has this method to hold it together, and I just thought this would be easier because a lot of times my scrap wood is not even, and so when you try to glue it together, it doesn't make full contact. So this will be easier. So I'm just going to hammer these down into the little holes, and then I'm going to put them up next to each other and find out where my next holes need to be. I'm just going to make little marks and then drill the other holes, because sometimes my holes are not even. I do things kind of fly by the seat of my pants, but that's okay. That's part of being creative. And now I'm going to drill the holes in there and this side, and then I will connect them. Now you could put a little wood glue in there if they don't fit tightly, but mine fit pretty tightly. I'm not worried about them coming apart at all. And when I get 3 of these, well, I did 2 of these together. This is actually going to be the middle piece of our pumpkin. I'm trying to hit it with my hand. Let's get the hammer out. Very sturdy, very good. So that's going to be the middle piece. And then I have these 3 pieces I'm going to do the same thing with. So I'm going to measure out 2 inches in and then in the middle. And I'm going to do that on each end. And then I'm going to drill holes there. It's important to make sure you're going straight up and down too, which is a little bit difficult when you're going on such a small, thin piece of wood. But from what I can tell, I did good. Yeah, that pine was a little bit wet, and it really smelled so nice. it made my craft room smell like pine. So I'm going to use one piece of wood to keep it straight across the bottom, and then I'm going to mark where I need to make a hole, where I need to drill. I'm going to drill that little spot out, and then I'm going to line that up and then mark where my next one should go, making sure it fits. Yep, fits nice and snugly. Snuggly or snugly, either way. Now this one had a little crack in it, and I was kind of worried that this piece of wood might split, but it did not. It was beautiful, worked great. So I'm just going to pop those two together, and then I'm going to do the same thing for the other piece to get these three pieces hooked together. Now, there they are hooked together. Now, the two pieces that I hooked together earlier, we're going to attach to the three pieces that are hooked together by those two little pegs on the back side. Oops, see them? There they are. It's really difficult for me to keep this in the frame, and I apologize, but you can still kind of see what I'm doing. I'm just marking where I need to drill those holes so that we can stick those in there. I probably should have done one at the bottom, but I did put a little wood glue at the bottom instead of a peg. Now they look crooked, but it's because these were crooked on the back, because they fit just fine. Very good. Yay! Okay, now I'm going to use a little bit of this Titebond Quick and Thick, and I'm going to just squirt it up underneath between there where it's making contact, and that's going to just give it a little extra added strength. Okay, I drilled a hole all the way through. I sure did, but no worries. When you see in the end, you're not even going to notice it. So I went ahead and hammered my peg all the way through. So it just it's going to make it flush. And then I'm going to do the same process for this one as I did the second layer. And we'll call this the top layer. And then we're just going to hammer that in. Same song, same second verse, same as the first. And then I'm going to stick a little bit more of that glue at the bottom like I did on the second layer. And I'm going to take some sandpaper. I'm just going to sand down that little piece of wood that was sticking out, and you can't even tell. Now I'm going to darken up this summer crush a little bit with some weathered wood, because I want to give this little pumpkin a little bit of dimension. And I got too much weathered wood, so I just added a little more summer crush. And I'm going to kind of dry brush a little, not quite dry brush, but not super wet either. Just in the crevices and kind of where the pumpkin would have those creases. And then I took some just a little bit of weathered wood and did it right around the edges. I did that. This was more of a dry brush. I just did it kind of around the edges a little bit. I love this weathered wood. I think it's a beautiful color. It's kind of a grayish brown, more of a gray tone, but it's just beautiful. So I'm drying it up with the heat gun so that we can speed this process up. I'm going to take that little, it's either 60 or 80 grit. I can't really remember. It came with my orbital sanding pads, and so I just use them by hand. But I'm just going to give this a little bit of distressing in a few areas, and then I'm going to seal it with Big Top by DIY. I really have grown to love this sealer. We're going to seal our DIY paint because it is water soluble, and if we don't seal it, when it gets wet or moisture hits it, it's going to reactivate it, and it could be a huge mess. And so we work too hard on our projects not to take care of them properly. So we're going to seal this up, front, back, sides, the whole 9 yards. and it also helps that paint to dry a richer color than if you wax it. Now, this is part of a spindle off of a chair, and yeah, I just drilled a hole in the bottom just like I did on the other pieces. Now, this was the handle of one of these sponge paint brushes, and I always save them, and I used my miter shears to cut it the length I wanted. I'm showing you how easy it is. That just pops off because that wood is so soft. And so I'm going to use that to attach that to the top of our pumpkin piece. Hammer that down in there good, like a peg, and then I'm going to put a hole right there and then stick that down in there. There's my hole. Now, this was a process. I was going to stick this in there and glue it down. Then I decided I needed to do something to it first. See, I start with the tight bond, quick and thick. And I decide I'm going to squirt some down in there. And I'm trying to put that stem in there. And then I decide, wait, I need to do something to this stem. Which I should have just left it alone. But I do love how it turns out in the end. So I decided I was going to wrap this burlap ribbon, this really wide burlap ribbon around here. And then I decided I didn't really like that. So I was going to wrap some twine around it. Well, then I started wrapping a bunch of twine around it. I mean a lot of twine. And then I get to the end, and it is just looking like a hot mess. I don't even know what this looked like. I don't know. It looked like something, well, the birds make nicer nests than this. Anyway, so I just ripped it all off, ripped every bit of that off, sanded it down, all that hot glue off there, and I think it looks great. I should have just done that in the first place. So now back to the glue because the glue's already dried at this point. So I put some of that wood glue in there. I put some wood glue on the stem. I think I did. Oh, I put it on the pumpkin. I'm going to put the hot glue on the stem on the opposite side where the wood glue is going to be, just for a quick hold while the wood glue or the tight bond until it sets up. Okay, now I have some raffia, I have some twine, and I have this lace crocheted ribbon from Dollar Tree. If you've been here very long, you know that I love that ribbon. Every time I find it, I grab some up. And this was kind of a new one to me, so I really liked it. So I'm going to wrap this raffia and this ribbon around the base of this stem. I think I've been calling it a stump. Okay, it's a stem. It's our makeshift stem. And then I'm going to put a little bit of hot glue at the base so that our raffia and our ribbon don't slide off. So I'm going to put a little bit in the back there, and then I'll put a little bit in the front right behind our knot, just so it'll stay where we want it to. Then I'm just going to make a knot. I feel like I'm trying to braid curly hair here, trying to keep all of these pieces all together where they're supposed to be. Okay, and then I'm going to, just with the crochet ribbon, I'm going to tie a bow. Oh, I didn't show that part. And then I'm going to do this technique that I absolutely love to do. I'm going to wrap that raffia around a dowel rod. This is a large dowel rod I have in my stash I use for things like this. I'm going to take my heat gun and I'm going to dry that up instead of putting it in the oven like we used to back in the day. You know, back in the 80s and 90s. Just going to use the little heat gun and dry that. Now I just spritzed it with my little mister just to get it damp, and then look how cute that is. It looks like little tendrils. I do cut those off a little bit shorter when I trim it all up at the end. But I'm going to do the same thing on this side, just in fast motion. It would be nice if we could really work that fast. Anyway, I think this really turns out great. I love it. You let me know what you think about it. Do you have any scrap wood laying around that you could do this with? I think this is about 10 inches tall. The wood pieces are 10 inches tall. So it's a nice sturdy piece, and we used very little glue. Let me know if you would use this technique to put your projects together. Thank you, friends, for watching this video all the way to the end. Be sure and let me know in the comments below if this was your first time seeing these DIYs or if you remember them from the original posting of the video. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up, and most of all, remember to be still and know that He is God.